Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
June 10th, Conservation Commission, Exeter Conservation Commission meeting to order. We'll start off with introduction of our members, starting with Kyle.
Kyle Welch.
Trevor Matera.
Andrew Koff.
Dave Short.
Valerie Fanger.
Michelle Crapo.
And then
Kristen Murphy, Conservation and Sustainability Planner, and I think there might be some folks on Zoom.
and Donna's. Yeah.
Turn it on.
Oh, Bill's on Zoom too. Okay.
I'm on the, I'm up there in the gallery.
All right, I can hear you. Don, can I hear you?
Don, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm here too.
All right, gotcha.
Different gallery than Bill's though.
All right. Public comment. Doesn't look like it. So let's go right on to the action items. First one is a conceptual review of redevelopment plan for 133 Portsmouth Avenue, Foss Motors. Bruce Scammon will be making a presentation from Emmanuel Engineers for this project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission and members of the public, for the record, my name is Bruce Scammon with Emmanuel Engineering and James Barron Associates. I'm here tonight with Tim Foss of Foss Motors. We have been working, does this work for that?
Yep.
It does.
It should.
Nice, okay. We've been working on the design of Foss Motors and redesign. As you know, Foss Motors came before you, put in an additional parking lot adjacent to, between the Sylvania driveway and Waterworks Pond Road. They had originally asked for an additional building out beyond that. They pulled that back off of the plan set from hearing from the commission and the planning board, with the assumption that they were going to be able to put an addition or rebuild their site because of the need that they have for more space. Currently, they have 12 bays for maintaining cars, and it's just not nearly enough for the amount of cars that they sell. So they need somewhere as close to 30, and they need a lot more sales space and all associated space within the dealership. Additionally, they have both a Jeep dealership and a Ram dealership. So you need, with modern dealership requirements, they need additional space there as well. We've been in an exercise of trying to figure out how to expand with the lots that they own. Currently, there's 3 lots. There's a lot here that stretches out behind the lot that crosses and includes the Sylvania. Do I need to take this with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there is a pointer on the.
Oh, there is? That's what I
thing,
was-
If the top button,
Okay,
it's
Oh,
a
that-
little slowed it there.
perfect. I didn't want to turn it off. That's almost like an off button. So this lot goes actually it goes out here and comes around there. That's the first lot. Their primary lot that they've been operating on goes like this. And then they had bought the Toyota dealership some years ago, which is this lot. So there's 3 lots that are, that they own. And what we were looking for at first, we've been exploring this for a little while, like I said, was to expand off the back here. And so we looked at that, and now we've also looked at building a whole new dealership right here and staying in business in the existing dealership while we construct the new building, and then remove this building after the fact. So that's the big picture. Here is the 3 lots all in one survey. As you know, they originally were planning to put a building in here. There was discussion because of the reservoir here and any water that might come down off of that. So they pulled that building off the proposed plans. And now we are proposing to put a building in this area here. It's another, the preliminary site plan. So this is showing the new building. You can see this little, right here is the existing building with the hash marks around it, overlaid on this preliminary site sketch. This, to minimize impact, They are planning to make this a 3-story building so that instead of trying to expand further, we will have sales in what would be almost like a basement building, so that as you come up Portsmouth Avenue, you'd be able to see the basement part of that building where they could have some sales. And then, I would assume that would be trucks, dealership trucks and possibly. And then the Jeeps probably would be on the first floor, and then they would have corporate offices on the third floor, or the second floor, I guess it would be. This little bump out would be for drop off for service, and the rear of the building would all be bays that would be for maintenance. So the reason we're here today is because of this wetlands here, and then the man-made wetlands that is the road driveway ditch on this side. So I just wanted to show you, this is what was proposed when we got involved, would be the addition that would be required, and they possibly might even need this additional building for their square footage. That is approximately 73,000 square feet. This is taking what the building we proposed, this one, overlaying the basement floor and the second floor, so that you'd see a footprint of how much space they need for their operations, just pictorially to give you an idea. And this is what we're proposing to do in the rear ditch, is to design would be the largest sand filter, to my knowledge, in the state of New Hampshire. The swale in the back is approximately 20 feet deep. We would have stone at the bottom for overflow flood stage storage. It would all be in the bottom. We would have stone on top, so that we could have dry wells and collect the water from the ridge on the site. Let me go back. Essentially, the site has a ridge that runs around in here, and the water all runs to the rear of the lot. Currently, none of that is treated. So all of that water just flows into this wetlands and then is piped from about here right into the sluiceway exiting the waterworks. So right now, none of that water is treated. What we're proposing is to take that water from this area of the lot and put it into this large sand filter here. Traditionally, biofilters are between 18 and 24 inches thick, so we're proposing a 36-inch sand filter. So that water would all have to work its way through this biofilter, where bacteria would grow and treat the water. We feel that this would be a far superior method of treatment of the water that's currently being just dumped into the drainage swale that's behind the dealership and then pushed through the pipe under the former Sylvania parking, or the driveway and lawn that was daylighted into the existing outlet of the reservoir. So at that point, that's our preliminary discussion. I can talk in more detail of that, but I just wanted to bring that to you and have some discussion about what your thoughts are and where we could work with you on what your thoughts are on the bioswale and how to best move forward in getting the dealership that they need to stay here in town.
And so just for concept, so that it's clear to the board, this is a conceptual design. Your comments to the applicant are non-binding, but it's an opportunity to provide feedback. You're not held to the comments that you make here should a redesign come back. It's really just an open discussion about what you see.
That's why we wanted to come here early, just to have some discussion, show you what we were thinking is a way to mitigate the wetlands disturbance that's proposed.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
You mentioned a 73,000 square foot building that was down below. Isn't that much larger than what was proposed before? Wasn't it a 20,000 foot?
Yes, 73,000 was a combination of the addition and the 20,000 square foot.
Oh, okay, all right. So it's that one down there, you're still talking about the 20, okay, thank you for clarifying that.
So that's 73,000 square feet, and what we're proposing is 83,000 square feet total.
Okay. And then,
And that's why we're doing it, but in a much smaller footprint. We're doing it in a 36,000 square foot footprint, but by having it multi-story, we're trying to minimize that impact.
so, I mean, there is a wetland there. And I think you,
Absolutely.
right. I think you mentioned that the wetland impact is how many square feet? About 15?
Honestly, I don't have that off the top of my head, and let me pull up my plan and
Okay.
get that for you.
Of the natural, it's 15,009. Do you want, then man-made isn't totaled, but total with the man-made, so someone could do the subtraction, all wetland impact is 22,050.
And
So
then,
7,041 of man-made.
And that's direct wetland impact, and not.
Correct.
Not to mention
The
the
buffer.
buffer impacts.
yeah, do you have square footage on the buffer impact?
Unless, Kristen, I don't think we've done that at this point. We're all just in a preliminary stage.
Okay.
So,
I'm just trying to get a sense of it. Okay.
absolutely. So it's
be-
about a third of an acre total.
All right, because it seems like it goes like halfway through your new building there. Is that
does.
right? The buffer?
Yes. So this is already previously impacted,
Right.
running right around here. And it definitely would go back into this area.
Okay.
Let me pull back to, the buffer here is shown as the red lines.
Yeah.
Yep. So most of it, the buffer is already an impacted area with fill and pavement. So you can see here, this is the extent of the previously impacted buffer.
Right.
Right, because that's a slope.
That's all
Yeah,
the
that's a
man-made
filled
slope.
Slope
Yes.
from the parking lot. What is the wetland itself? Like, I remember walking the ditch, the man-made wetland, along that GTE road when we did a site visit last year. But I don't think we went up beyond to see that wetland that's impacted there.
There's a drainage ditch that runs down through there. It was, we went up and looked at some of the repair work that was done previously for Hannaford's.
Because, yeah, there's a Hannaford that
Hannaford's, it was all, it's all been,
discharges to the top of that.
so starting at the old Route 51, when the state rebuilt that, it's all been regraded and rebuilt down to basically our property line, about here. because it's all done with riprap and gabions. They rebuilt behind the Hannafords when that was put in. There's a sign out there. We went out and looked at that, and so it's all been touched as part of the drainage swale that runs off of Route 101, and like I said, the old Route 51 or the bypass, the start of the bypass.
Holland Way. you're talking
Holland
about.
Way, yes, I'm sorry.
But what is that's a drainage ditch, you're saying, that wetland that you're impacting. But it's more than, it's the width is more than a ditch. So it's
Correct.
sort of a meandering ditch that has
There is.
some wetland areas on
I
either
would
side
tell you
of it.
that the swale that runs down through it is probably ranges from 2 feet to 5 feet wide. And when they did the wetlands, they did it at what would be the flood stage, is what they're considering the wetlands. Is what the wetland scientists talked about when they flagged it. We can have the wetlands scientists come in, but we figured for an initial preliminary.
Yeah.
It's more of just a discussion to talk about what's out there.
Isn't there a stream that goes underground somewhere there?
Yeah, that's what we were talking about, is right here is a head wall, and there's pipe, the daylight's here in the outlet of the reservoir. So all we were talking about would be extending that pipe up to about here. So adding probably about 300 feet, plus or minus,
With that cross-section that you're showing us.
with the cross-section, so that the water that's running off right now, all along this slope, would be put into the BIOS treatment swale.
So it's not a culvert pipe, or it is.
We're gonna have a culvert, let me go right to it so we can look directly at it. So, you look at this, this is actually a pipe, the extension. We're gonna make that perforated. Most of our bioretention work is done with perforated pipe, so the water can flow into those rocks and then slowly drain out. That's the water that's coming from upstream. And then any water coming off the parking lot and in the new areas would go into this rock area, which would be a storage. And then we'd put in a 3-foot sand filter to treat the water. So it actually has treatment to it before it goes into the pipe where it's going to daylight down on the outlet of the reservoir.
Wasn't the new parking lot on the south side also going to drain back into that area?
I honestly, I didn't design that, so I can't tell you.
Do any of you
probably
guys
have a
remember that?
copy of it if we needed to. I believe it's all going to be porous pavement.
Yeah.
So porous pavement traditionally has a similar section, but much smaller and much thinner.
Because I remember that head wall
you're
coming
right.
up.
Yeah, it's going like up to that head wall.
Yeah.
And then it's,
So how does
So-
that all mesh, I guess?
So the town planner did receive a field modification request to change the outlet. I don't know if a decision has been made on that. I don't know the status of it, but there was a request to do some changing there.
So, okay, so it is going to play some role in what happens here.
Yeah, I apologize that I don't know this for sure, but I believe it was outletting directly instead of outletting north of the GTE road.
So by having this storage, we're creating the storage so it'll slowly go down through the sand filter. This will take hours to get to percolate, and that makes it so it's delayed, so it comes out at a slower rate than what goes out today. So we will actually reduce the flow leaving the site. We haven't done all the drainage calculations, but I've never designed a sand filter with 3 feet of sand. The most I've ever done is 2 feet by AOT regulations. So we were planning to have it a little thicker because of all the extra pavement that we're going to be pulling towards it. And then making it, like I said, an extra thick stone layer for storage above and below.
Bruce, it's not entirely clear to me where physically that is on the plan.
Sure,
Can you point that out?
actually. So this will be, this whole area will
But
all
one
be a
of the
sand
notes
filter.
says storage.
Yeah, this is under a parking lot.
Okay,
So that we're trying to make it so that
gotcha.
it's actually being used and treated so that we can use the area to its fullest extent. Because we're going to have access here for back and forth traffic with the dealership and access around the building. This is going to be down at the level of the driveway here. So this is all drive-in into the basement or first floor. And this, the other 3 sides are all going to be at the second floor elevation. So first floor,
Yeah, I
second
think
floor,
it is.
third floor.
Maintenance. Sounds maintenance.
So those standpipes are going to be coming up through the parking lot.
That's, they're just to be
gonna-
like a catch
they're-
basin,
They're catch basins, basically.
but they're dry wells so that they can
Right.
release the
Right.
water and spread it out through the stone basin underneath.
Now, what filters the water so that eventually, say, that sand doesn't get silted in?
Well, there's a couple things we'll have to do through the full design process, is we'll have to put some sort of inlet protection up here. But the rocks themselves are the biggest chunk of that, is that these rocks, it won't be able to get down to the sand. The sand's gonna be,
But fine particulates wouldn't go through that?
well, we'll have to work on that at this stage right here and have a sump of some sort into this dry well. It may be that we put a second catch basin adjacent to it and then have the catch basin itself be with a sump and then have an overflow into the dry well. Like I said, we haven't 100% designed that fully because this whole system we needed to get some sort of, we're going to the planning board also Thursday night. So we think this is a pretty unique system. And wanted to get some feedback from the commission and the planning board before we would go forward with a full design.
Now, you said this will potentially be the largest such structured.
Yeah, I don't know of any
In the
others in
state.
state. There could be bigger
it-
ones.
is
I'm not
there-
trying to say
No, but
it's
I'm
it's
just-
the end
I'm
all
just-
be all, but I've never heard of one
I'm
that's 20
just
feet
curious
deep.
if there's a smaller one that you're familiar with and how that is functional.
We design these on a daily basis. This is basically a porous pavement section, but on just so much bigger, that's all. So
It's
we're
just
taking-
scale.
It's just a scale so that it gets more time for treatment going through. Additionally, if we have 3 feet below it of stone, we have not gone to alteration of terrain yet. We might need to do what they call an ISR, which is an artificial wetlands that would be below grade for denitrification. So we'll be working with DES on that. So we won't, the sand filter is an aerobic process where we take nitrite and nitrates and make it, and convert it, nitrogen and make it into nitrate. And then if we need to have a denitrification process, that would be here and that would be anaerobic. And you do that with pool liner, basically, is a simple way of calling it. And you let the water sit in that, and it goes anaerobic. And then the nitrogen will go off as nitrogen gas and go back up to the atmosphere. And you will have cleaner water going back out. Like I said, we've designed it so that we could do that. We just haven't shown that on the plan yet because we'll be working with DES on that part of the design. We've done similar design for TurboCam up on Barrington, up on Route 9, on a recent facility that we did there. I would say our office park has very similar style systems.
Yep.
We've done it on multiple car dealerships around the state. Almost every system that I design at this point, I'm putting in a bio-treatment system so that we can have really clean the water.
Okay.
If you just put it into a pond, the way traditional systems are, you're really not, in my mind, treating water. You need a nitrification process where you can have bacteria just like we do with leach fields and things. And so that's the surface area they get with a sand filter is the surface area compared to the volume. And you get much more surface area running through sand than you do with like rocks. So the traditional septic system has rocks in it. And if you just think about something that's the size of my fist or the size of the tip of my pen, you could put so many more of these tips, in that area that my fist is, you get a lot more surface area. And so bioengineering a lot of times goes to surface area to volume ratios. And the sand filter is much more efficient and has a lot more surface area for that type of treatment, for where the bacteria would grow.
So just out of,
Well, just,
Go ahead.
it looks like Don's got a comment or a question. Let's see.
Well, you're muted, Don. Can you unmute?
Yes.
There you
Thank
go.
Good evening, Mr. Scammon. Just one quick question. The sand filtration system, as you're calling it, will the drainage from above Holland Way come through that filtration system?
It will not. That's why
It will
there's a
not.
bypass underneath with the pipe, by extending the existing pipe. But what it will do is, in a larger storm event, it would come into this rock area where bacteria would also grow, just not as efficiently as the sand filter itself.
Okay. I was hoping to get some water purification coming from the drainage, to improve that water quality. I thought it would go, if it was able to utilize the sand filtering filtration system, it would remove more nitrogen coming from that drainage from the north side, I think, of Holland Way, which would vastly improve the water quality entering the sluiceway, which gets into Wheelwright Creek, which gets into the Squamscott, which gets into Great Bay. All trying to reduce nitrogen. Thank you, though.
No,
Appreciate it.
I was looking at the third hole at Exeter Country Club, looking into that creek over the weekend, thinking about that.
Yeah, I guess that's my concern too, is you are sort of extending the culverted section. So we already have a long culverted section across that parking lot and down across Waterworks Pond Road. So we have a significant, it tends to be the opposite of, in general, we want to remove these long culverts rather than add additional culverted sections.
Yeah.
So I get it, you're potentially treating stormwater coming off your parking lot, but then there may be actually a reduction, because you're getting rid of the wetland there. That wetland has some
It's,
stormwater attenuation and treatment features of the water that's moving through it right now that you will be removing because you are getting rid of that wetland
yeah.
on whole. I do appreciate that you're not planning that to impact that other area on the hill above the Waterworks Pond Road. So I appreciate that that's being avoided, and that you're trying to focus the impacts on this
Sure.
area. And so this plan doesn't have shoreland impacts. It's just
Correct.
wetland, direct wetland
Direct
and
wetland
wetland
and
buffer
buffers.
impacts.
Yes.
I think there might be some grading.
There may be some minor
Yeah.
shoreline grading.
Yeah, I guess. There's a little strip right along the edge of the road, the driveway. Here, let me
Oh,
go
I
back to
see.
that.
There's that one of the lines is the shoreline.
So right here is the shoreland. So there's a little strip right here.
Okay.
But it's very
Minor.
minor in this versus putting a building here at this point.
Yeah.
We're trying to, like I said, Foss Motors is trying to stay here in town, and they're not making more land, and unfortunately, they need to expand to stay here. And that's the,
Just out of curiosity, why, I'm sure you considered this, but that Toyota property up there, former Toyota property, why not do some building up there away from the wetland?
because they still need to have the parking.
Right.
And this isn't a big enough area to put in the size building that they need. I mean, like I said, we looked at just building here, which would also impact the wetland. But the problem is that's gonna almost put them out of business partially because they also would need to do all of this area. And then you'd just be putting parking over this. And so it just makes, a combination of environmental and business. They need to be able to build, and by building here, they can stay in business in this location during that construction period. And it's just a practical part of trying to deal with staying in business and building a facility that's big enough to keep them in business here.
Am I reading the plan right, that it essentially paves to the property line?
Correct. So in the rear, we're putting up retaining walls.
Yep.
And I find that retaining walls, when we deal with wetlands, are always better because you don't have the fill extensions and you create a barrier that stuff doesn't get creeped over that barrier. As I've seen on many sites, fill gets pushed over and things like that. And when you have a retaining wall, it's a location that both town officials and property owners delineate a hardened location for, so that the wetlands that are continue up do not get touched. We have a little bit of a gap here. There's an existing man-made pond here that is the drainage from the new building or the renovated building that's here. We're gonna be taking that and incorporating it into our stormwater system as well. This is, when I went and looked at it, is not being maintained. It's overgrowing, then it is part of the other reason I like to design these underground systems. Is nobody lets trees grow up in them, and the trees don't fall over, tear out berms, and cause flooding issues. They don't have mosquitoes growing in them that create triple E issues or other infestations of new sicknesses. So I like this because it's an enclosed system that has better treatment and doesn't create a surface wetland that causes other issues. If we create an underground wetland for DES, it's going to be in a controlled environment that will go anaerobic and be treating it for nitrogen. We won't be creating a spot that mosquitoes and other bloodborne pathogens can be created. There's plenty of good wetlands, other places that can do that. I just don't like creating them artificially
Sure.
on top of that.
And that man-made wetland in the bottom right-hand corner, that wasn't created for any of the current development that's there, correct? That's like an artifact of
It's
time
been there
past.
for quite a while, so I assume that it dates back to prior to the existing development, but I
Certainly
don't
not.
know that for a fact.
Yeah, certainly not to the CNA, because that's on your land there. Okay.
Seeing that retaining wall just got me thinking about what is presently done for snow storage and what's proposed to be done for snow storage?
We haven't completely designed, like I said. I would assume that part of this back parking lot would be used for snow storage. It could be taken off-site. Currently, they put snow all around this side of the building. So I would assume that would continue as they have been doing.
Okay. But it definitely won't be going over the wall.
Yes, we can put that on the plan.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of wetland to pack. It's hard to stomach a little bit for me because there's no avoidance or minimization here. It's just you're basically filling that entire wetland, turning
Correct.
it into a parking lot. So it's
Parking lot and
I
building.
get what you're trying to do, but at the same time, it's a significant significant ask to go along with this.
Yeah, I'll just put my thoughts out there, I guess. Yeah, I think like you mentioned, I mean, it's sort of it's a complete removal of what's there. I don't think I would recommend any kind of like trying to like claw back little pieces of this or that or the other thing, because like I would say the value in any one little sliver of piece just isn't there if you take away the other pieces. Like, I'm not focused on buffers right now if you're wiping out a wetland. I'm not focused on like in terms of habitat value. There's not any connectivity here. It's between two large developments. So like what we're actually thinking of when we're trying to preserve a piece, like if I'm looking at this wetland and I'm saying, do I want to save that wetland and why? I think it's trying to have, I'm looking through this lens right now. So I'm not trying to just grab any single, like every single piece of what we usually look at in a wetland, say like, oh, I want buffer, I want habitat value, I want connectivity, because like most of that's not there now, right? So I think in saying that, I agree that there would be some loss of just some of the water retention and natural function infiltration of the wetland, and reverse daylighting is usually not the direction we want to go in when it comes to these kind of running water bodies. But all in all, like not having like looked at that wetland at all or having any kind of like firsthand knowledge of what that is, like I'm looking at this and like the value's probably not really there for this one. So like that's sort of where I'm coming from right now, just looking at it on paper. I think on the flip side, last time Mr. Foss was in and we were talking across the street, like there were values that we absolutely valued protecting, right? Like there was buffers and there were reasons we were saying like stay out of those buffers because there was a reservoir on the other side of those buffers, right? That was the buffers, and those were the reasons and the values that we were actually trying to preserve in the property across the street, which is why I think we came to a really good agreement on where that project landed. This one, I'm a little mixed because I think probably like the rest of the board, just the sticker shock of the amount of wetland, I mean, you're basically saying like all of this will be gone for a parking lot is usually not something that's like looked kindly upon in this room. But again, sort of like digging down and saying, we know we can't save everything. These kinds of water bodies are generally at the lower end of my list because those values don't exist in the first place.
I think I would probably agree with Drew that it's a huge ask because it is paving over a huge amount. I mean, it's going to have to be 40,000 square feet or something once we get to wetlands and buffer. I don't see any offsetting in this plan yet with land put into conservation. Might be something to look at, especially near in the shoreland area, and elsewhere as much as possible. But right now I think it's a huge ask. And I'm just trying to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, that's why we're here, to talk about
Yeah.
it. And hear what you have to say, and we can come up and come back to you with something. I think that the biofilter that we're talking about putting in there is also a big give. My guess is that's probably $1 million biofilter that they're looking at putting in for the cost of that. So it's not as if we didn't come here with any thoughts of trying to make things better than they are today. So in my mind, the water quality and the storage and the volume of storage that's there, that we're proposing, is better than what's there today. So on a design, as a, ag engineer, I went with an emphasis in aquaculture and fish farming and designing biofilters at Cornell University. That's why I think that what we've offered is not insignificant as you might think it is. It's a big give. So
Bruce, along that line, and I don't typically spend a lot of time commenting during conceptual, but along that line, so we receive credits for stormwater treatment that we do through the, through PTAP, and all of those are basically reduced to removal efficiencies. So do you have a sense for what the removal efficiencies would be for this, and whether it meets our design requirements?
I would think it would exceed them, but that's just a gut feeling. I haven't designed it yet. I haven't, gone through that whole process, but that's what we were trying to get to. That all that stormwater that's gonna go back to this is gonna be treated, and meet any standard. Because we have to go to alteration of terrain, and they, to my knowledge, Exeter is no harder than alteration of terrain requirements. So we're going to be treating this water.
And for the whole site or just the new development?
Like I said, there's a high point that runs through the site like this. What's existing, this is all existing pavement. that runs out towards the road. So everything in the rear half that runs down and into this current wetlands is where we're looking to treat. And that's why we have a thicker rock section in that top, and the top than what we normally would. Traditionally, this is 6 inches of stone. And we're proposing somewhere it's around 3 feet.
Would that include anything coming off the roof of the building? So the entire new building, even if.
I want to be careful saying entire until we get into full design, but yeah, as much as we can,
The intent would be
correct,
to drain,
drain that.
you're going to keep the grade pretty much the same, but,
Yes,
so you'll still have that ridge and flowing in two directions.
correct.
But you're going to try to capture the roof water.
Correct.
And send that back.
Alteration terrain makes us treat all roof water.
Okay.
So we'll be treating it one way or another. If we can't fit it into this or make it to flow there, then we'll have to add additional treatment in the front for that roof.
So just so, to give you a heads up, and, I would advise you to take a look at the regs and come up with your own interpretation, but because the existing impervious cover is less than 50%, you need to meet the new development standards of our stormwater requirements. So redevelopment, you get a break a little bit if it's already, dramatically impacted, but with redevelopment, when it's not dramatically impacted, it's below 60%, we require you to meet the standards of new development.
Okay? We'll be working with Underwood, and working on all that through that whole process.
Yeah, it just seems like a lot of this, it seems to be hinging on the stormwater design, so I just want to be sure.
Yes.
When we talk again, you have the full picture.
Yeah, I would be interested in certainly the wetlands function and values, having the wetland scientists to come.
Absolutely.
Because that's kind of like, we're scared, trying to measure. So you have that. Those functions are going to be eliminated. Then it's going to be up to you to try to convince us that your treatment is a solution that is going to be equivalent to meet those functions and values that are lost. Obviously, there's going to be some wildlife functions and values that are just lost. I don't see how this wouldn't be able to do that. That's my concept of the task in terms of what I would be interested in, is taking a hard look at the wetlands functions and values.
Well,
And then total flow. I don't know how you measure the water coming through that existing system. Do you look at actual flow rates, or is it all just simulated in HydroCAD?
It's all simulated in HydroCAD is what the state of New Hampshire
Yeah.
requires, because that can be higher than, than what we might get for readings anytime in the near future. So we have to design for, say, 25-year, 50-year storm. If we don't get anything more than a 2-year storm over the next however many weeks, months, years that we're doing the design, then actual really doesn't mean a lot. If you hear what,
Sure.
because we may not get a storm that's above 3 inches. I don't know the last storm that we had that was above 3 inches, but local designs are usually between 8 and 10 inches of rain that we're designing for. So, unless there's some monsoon that comes through, it would be really hard to do any types of real measurements that are meaningful. For the type of-
Would this send more water? Would it increase the flows through the head wall potentially?
No,
No,
because
because of the attenuation you're talking about through
Yes.
the gravel?
by making that pipe perforated on the ground here, what we like to do is we like to make these perforated so it can also flow to the stone if it's dry enough, the water doesn't just stay in the pipe, it'll spread out into the stone. And when the water is down in the stone, it'll percolate down into the ground.
Right.
So,
But it would be doing that now, because it's in a wetland.
correct. But what happens is by holding water up on top for hours, if not sometimes a day, it comes down slower and has more time for actually percolating and infiltrating down below the pipe. Because it's going to rain that water down through over a longer period of time.
Yeah, I guess I get it in theory. I just am curious how it actually plays out on the ground in this particular site.
Sure.
So I mean, I get all what you're saying. I believe you, but
Yeah.
I'd be curious what the outfall of that culvert looks like in that part of the site, because
Yes.
I think we want to look at this system. You're significantly modifying, so I would also be curious in understanding that outfall, because you're now creating this giant culverted system. Part of it is it's perforated, but you're expanding this head wall up a significant way. So I would also want to make sure that whole system makes sense. And it meets the current design. So, because if I don't know if that pipe is hanging or wherever at the end, and why are we building this giant $1 million new thing to have it be this crappy outfall? I don't know what that outfall looks like. Below.
The downslope, you're
Yes,
saying.
the downslope.
So,
But I'd like
The
to think a
downslope
little more holistically
Sure.
about this system.
so the downslope is
Off-site,
off-site down here.
right?
And this will be a closed system all the way. There's also pipe underneath, it's funny, pipe underneath 101, under Holland Way, and
Right.
it's all in man-made structures this whole way, running down through here. So
Understood.
it's not just this area, and even on this area behind Hannaford's, it's running through gabions and rocks, just like what we're planning to do with it. It's just we're doing it in somewhat enclosed in this area.
Yeah, I guess that only furthers my concern, is that this whole area is this. And I want to.
Make sure it
If you're
works.
messing with part of it, I feel like we should make sure the whole system is working.
Okay,
Because why are you investing $1 million if it's failing downstream of there? That's just my thought in the moment, though. I don't know that you would have authority or anything to, but to me, it would be worth the town looking into this whole area. Or at least going out on a site walk and making sure it all makes sense.
Anybody else? Oh, Bill, you're muted.
There we go. Does this system take a lot of upkeep?
the system itself does not. What might take some upkeep is the sumps that need to be cleaned out above this. As I said, we haven't designed that system. There's several different, ones that are readily available. But it's just cleaning out the sumps that are also part of this system.
And would that be Fox's responsibility? Fox's responsibility?
I would think it would be their responsibility to maintain their drainage structures, just like it would be anybody's private property
Right.
drainage structures.
Well, yeah. We didn't install, but they installed a beautiful system up at Hannaford's. before Hannaford was in there. And the DES gave it 5 years, and then they said they're finished with it, and now it's shot. It's all overgrown and it doesn't work. And I just would like
That's why I like these biosystems.
Bill, you
because
okay.
you don't have the vegetation that destroys them. So the vegetation is great in a lot of places, in a lot of ways, but anytime you get root systems going into a treatment system, and those roots disturb the pipes, they disturb the layers, they cause short cutting through the treatment system. So that's why I like this type of system, because it doesn't have any of those biological impacts from things growing in them and on them. So that's why I like this
Right.
system.
Okay. Anyone else? All right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Really
you, Bruce.
appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, next up, we have a wetland and shoreline conditional use permit for Ray Farm LLC, Ray Farm condominiums, for the relocation of Building D in Ray Farmstead Road. Tax map parcels number 47 to 8 and number 47 to 8.1. Planning Board Case 22-3. And I am going to need to recuse myself from this one. Sean, would you like to vote on this one? Okay. And Connor, you're up.
So
Thank
if
you.
you do, since you are recusing yourself, you should
Should I go back?
leave the table and join the audience.
I'd be happy to.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, just
No,
important
that's
to get
the
the
good,
process right.
good process.
Does Sean get promoted then, or?
Just
Yep.
didn't like how
You're
happy he
welcome to
was.
Go to the table.
Should I? Do I have to?
I don't think so. You can stay
Yes.
wherever you
No.
want. Yeah, you're good, wherever you want.
Good.
Do I have to sit in your chair now?
Yeah, you should.
You can monitor the,
Yeah, monitor the crowd.
Is the agenda up there? I don't know.
On this thing? Oh, yeah. He's got it all set up. It's perfect. So tonight we have, I believe it's Millennium Engineering. And I think it's Katharina? Nice, thank you. I was nervous about that one.
So unfortunately, they all didn't get into one PDF. So there will be a little bit of back and forth. Even better if I can get the right one going. So why are we here? So we're here for the Building D relocation for the Ray Farmstead project, which is the Wiley Creek Condominium Association. Kind of has many names and many players. In 2022, this was last before the board for conditional use and shoreline permits for a different configuration. In the years that have since followed, we've been asked to redesign the access ways to this to better meet the requirements of the road configuration and a couple different waivers from the planning side of things, which has also meant reevaluating the impacts for conservation. This new concept design that we have, I'll avoid the word concept because it's real, uses the TIF road, which is I think previously been considered the preferred access into the rear of the site because it will avoid additional duplicate or secondary wetland impacts that are affiliated with potentially that building C to D, and I know that was a concern previously from the board. We're here tonight to try and get recommendations for both the wetlands and shorelands impacts, which look this is the wetlands buffer plan, and then we can talk about the shoreline buffer plan, which look a little bit something like this. The comparison, I will let you direct that conversation, because if I stand up here, I'm going to confuse the world, I think, or give too much information. So I think it's better to do directive questions. But again, the kind of general idea of this revised site plan is it's the same building location from 2022. It's a revised access way. So this continues the town portion of the TIF road that already exists, so the town's already accepted a length of right-of-way. It will continue that and then taper it from a 28-foot cross-section down to a 24-foot wide road width for the duration of the driveway through the same area as the TIF road previously was going to use, and then derives the rest of the impacts from the parking required and the additional access requests that were required for the site. I need a note.
So I guess just to start off, the revision from the previous year, I think it was 2022, the road was coming in. Can you just kind of
Yeah, I can
orient me
show it
of where the road was?
Because I don't know, obviously, so in this process, I'm on the newer side. I don't know how many of the board are returning, how many of the board are new. So whatever we need to do to get everybody up to the same page is totally acceptable, valid, whatever.
Yeah, that might be a selfish question from me, but
Yeah, we're a mix of,
Yeah.
of old and new.
Yeah.
I was on the, I feel like an old timer now. I was back here in 2017 when we did the original one.
So this is,
yikes.
you know, the thing is, it comes out and I can take it with me. This is the GM2 plan from 2022. This one is dated, I believe it's 4/26, and was part of the package that came in front of the board that was favorable for the wetland impacts, not necessarily favorable for the shoreline buffer impacts. And so this uses, I can do better than my finger. This is the existing easement that's in place, and this is what is going to be the new kind of primary access way that you'll see in the revised plans when we flip back to them. So we've abandoned the majority of this wetland crossing in favor of a footpath, and then reconfigured the parking lot. And there's a couple of reasons for the parking lot reconfiguration. One being that the the requirements on the planning side of things actually require more parking to be on the ground. There are 36 spaces underneath, and in total, we're in the process of determining, but when this originally started, we really needed 72. And so that's the expansion of that parking lot out. And then you'll notice that, wrong button, that these impacts look similar from the shoreline aspect, where you're still using this downstream slope as a stormwater feature to help with the stormwater management and enhancing the water quality from the runoff. This particular one, the entrance to the underground is on this side, and so there's additional, yes, there's wetland buffer impact, and that's how we look at it one way, but there's more permanent impervious structure that's within this in this case because of this turnaround. And so that's something that's different from the new configuration as well.
Oh, it's on the other side.
It's on the other
upland
side. And I think
Better.
that sorry, I believed that they had created that as well, but they have not. And so if we do, why didn't it go big? Sorry. If we show it this way, you can see this is the revised shoreline impact plan, where you can see again, here's your Tiff Road crossing that's coming up, and then you have the extension of the Tiff Road as the main driveway access and some of that parking lot. We still have stormwater management in this area in the 100 to 150 foot buffer, but this entrance has been relocated to the other side to pull it out of the buffer even more, and try and reduce that some more.
Is there currently anything existing on that access that you are proposing?
No.
Okay.
Well,
So-
so we did the sidewalk, and there's a trail, there's a crossing, see how the wetland breaks
Yeah.
in the middle of the road right there? It's because there's a trail that crosses there, and I think it's a little culvert or something. There's somehow the stream goes underneath the trail section. And there's a lot of trails amongst all those woods.
Yeah,
back
that
in
was
there right
that was a
now.
really poor answer on my part. I apologize.
So there's lots of trail, but that's it really.
But that's why it's kind of, yeah, you got where I was going with
Yeah.
that question. That's why the wetland looks kind of
Weird.
funky in the
There's
application.
that discontinuous moment is because of an old. I don't know who put that crossing in, but it's been there a while.
Wasn't me.
Yeah, so you can see the pink between the green is that area that is the culvert crossing that we were standing on earlier today, for those who were at the site walk.
I just wanted to add that it is ostensibly a trail now, but there is a culvert in there. There's a metal culvert. I think my letter that
Could you end it? Can you, yeah, I caught Kristen. Can you introduce yourself?
Sorry. I'm used to being introduced in the beginning. Brendan Quigley, I'm a wetland scientist in New Hampshire with Gove Environmental Services. Andrew will probably remember that I too was involved since the very beginning of this. So I have some insight to things like this culvert. It was originally some sort of access road to this property in the early 80s, I believe. So it's more than just a trail crossing.
More than just a trail. It is a trail now, but
There,
it was.
there is a metal culvert in there. I think I said there was two. I might have been wrong about that because I couldn't find the existing conditions plans that I looked at. But there is a metal culvert in there, so.
And there's a stream that flows. I mean, it's part
Yeah.
of Norris Brook, right? It's Norris Brook.
No, it's Watson Brook.
Oh, sorry, Watson Brook.
Yeah, so, and that is, we discussed a little bit the site walk. This is the perennial limit per the USGS map, which is how it's determined in the ordinance. And that's why the shoreland district bends around like that. There is, if you looked at the history of the plans that were submitted from what was proposed in 2022, and then sort of an exercise that we did at the time to locate conceptually the larger building, that's Building D, as proposed now, in its original location with impacts. There's sort of no getting around it that we do have more impacts as we go into this design. However, it does accomplish, I think, a legitimate benefit in upgrading that crossing, which I don't know if anyone's looked at the actual state of it, my guess would be not good. So there's structural considerations as well as connectivity for the brook. Even though the only perennial down on the right-hand side, there is a stream that goes all the way through, and the culvert, the crossing that we put in further up as part of the original development was also a large open bottom box culvert, which was a commitment at the time for that, to maintain that connectivity. So carrying that same level of that same commitment to the stream down in this location here.
Sorry, so are you saying that would become an open bottom box culvert?
Yeah.
Crossing.
5 by 14 feet, a rather large one. And this is a relatively small stream. It's for the DES, I don't recall what the watershed was, but it was a tier 1 crossing. It's a small stream. So well in excess of what's required for a stream with this level of watershed. So yeah, all around an upgrade to that crossing for sure.
Yeah, it would seem that there is some culvert, but I imagine flow is severely restricted in high precip events when there's some backing up of that, and it looks sort of filled and it didn't seem like it was it's not a great crossing right there. So this would be a benefit, even though so I would agree there's more impact, but relative, this seems like a better design to me.
The other aspects, just to rattle through the standards, the building setback is met. The performance standards for the shoreline protection district in this particular stream is 100-foot building setback, which is being met. Of course, we're asking for the conditional use for the access crossing. There are no other. Well, there's various restrictions for what you can do as far as hazardous waste uses and various things like that, none of which are being done here. The development is on sewer, so there's no septic or anything of that nature. There's impacts for some of the parking, which Kat explained, trying to be reduced. But a lion's share of the shoreline impacts for the building D relocation relate to construction of stormwater management, which by definition, by requirement, generally they do end up down in the lower elevations, which if you have shoreland, that's where they should be. And I think there's generally recognized that that's an important characteristic of doing anything in the shoreline district. So it's always been we've always maintained that is an acceptable disturbance, maybe not even acceptable, but warranted and exactly what you would want given protection of water quality.
Before we get too far ahead, Bill, I see you have a question.
Yeah, my memory may be kind of shot here, but then, wasn't there a problem with the right-of-way up to the Carlisle property, and has that been taken care of? It seemed to me it went up right beside that building 4.
Yeah, I would say that's a separate issue. The right-of-way is shown on the plans. But in terms for, so there is accommodation for that legal right-of-way, but in terms of impacts to this design, it's sort of a moot point.
Okay, I just wondered whether it was affecting the wetlands there and the buffer. Okay.
Yeah, and the Carlisle, that crossing wouldn't have any additional impacts. So this plan, unlike previous ones, it accommodates the right-of-way.
Yeah.
So,
Which was a concern. That was one of the concerns when we were here in 2022,
Yeah.
is duplicating impacts, which does not occur here.
so I have a couple of questions based on the site walk. Was there a mention that some of that parking could be reduced? And can you talk about that?
So one of the reasons that we've, and I don't know the best way to attest to this, however, I'm just going to go for it. So the plans that we've submitted and the CUPs that we've submitted, if you actually read the permits themselves that are in play with the planning board right now, they are intentionally vague. And that's because we're still trying to determine how much impact we can remove. And so the state from 2022 to today has passed legislation for multifamily housing that reduces the required number of parking spaces per unit, and it takes it from 2 down to 1.5. And so that significantly reduces how many spaces we need in the total parking area. And so by when we came into this process in 24 and 25, that had yet to go into effect. And so the parking lot at that point needed to be 72 spaces. We needed to accommodate for 72 spaces because you're required to have 2 spaces per unit plus 1 additional space for every 8 units as a guest space. And so that in total is your 72. The state has now said, well, we can reduce that, and that will take the entire number down. Because of that, the building itself, let me scroll up a little bit so you can see the footprint. Underneath the building itself, there are actually 36 spaces provisioned for, and so we can reduce the number of on-the-ground spaces that we need and the parking that we need. I'm in the process of doing that as we kind of are here. And so I was able to get kind of an idea of what that may officially effectively look like. I've lost the pointer, sorry. And what that means is that these 2 handicap spaces will stay, the 2 EV-Go space placement kind of will stay, and then we may be able to cut the parking lot all the way back to here. And if we can do that, we're going to gain back everything from this wall out to the island. And that is about 3,500 square feet of permanent impact within the shoreline buffer zone that will be reduced and potentially can be removed. And so we're trying to realize those changes that may still need to occur prior to fully defining the numbers on the both CUPs.
Okay. This is the first time I've seen this. So is there land conserved in this? There must be some land conserved in this whole thing?
I don't think so.
There's no,
Well, so there's the open space kind of between the 4 buildings that's conserved. There's no like separate additional easement that would be made.
so when you
time.
say conserved, it's conserved by the condominium, in condominium rules?
Right.
Okay,
I'd be on the lot as open space.
okay.
That would retain some of those areas that are used right now for mountain biking and things like that.
And then my other question is about that sidewalk that connects the 2 buildings. So again, on the sidewalk, could you talk a little bit about that? Because it looks like it's going to be 6 foot of pavement connecting one building to the other.
Right. So the idea, in theory, is wonderful. And what I've come to realize a little bit more, especially after today, is that these impacts are incredibly large for what they need to be. And so what the owner has asked is that we maintain some type of pedestrian access between building C, which is here, and building D over here. And they've requested that that be done by creating a paved walkway that comes across that second crossing that we looked at and then ties back into the back of the Building C parking lot. And initially, they had asked that that be 6 feet wide. When I did the grading for this, I think the grading is a little excessive, and that creates a larger impact than's necessary. And so I would like to take the opportunity to review that area and see if we can maybe accomplish the same thing with a smaller impact of just really modifying the area where the trail is going to be and nowhere outside of that. And we can do that in a couple different ways, namely by going out and getting some additional survey information to see how those, where the existing trails run, and if we can maybe follow one of those and use that where they've already kind of been worn down and beaten out to be a little bit of a smoother walking area.
And it'd be nice not to have them be concrete.
Right, right. And I having walked the site and seen how it's structured now, that's on my list of things to discuss with the applicants when we go back and have we do shakeout meetings after every meeting that we attend and say, hey, what about? Trying to mitigate both the buffer impact and make it kind of fit in with the area, because I think pavement may look a little out of place for some odd reason.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
I would also add to that consideration, I know you have it on some of there. I don't know if they're all there. There's a lot of large boulders that are back in those woods. And I know some of those are going to have to be ripped out and destroyed. But if there may be one along that current path, I'm not sure. But that would be something to try to, what I would recommend, even though it's maybe not in a buffer or anything, but my recommendation would be, could you maintain the natural features that would keep it as a path and not as a road, where if you come in there and take out all the boulders and make a straight graded path, it doesn't feel, versus if you could wrap it around a rock, one of those larger rocks, that has a different sort of feel and feels like it could work better with
It's
that
more
site.
of that like scenic walking trail feel than hey, this is really man-made and out of place. And I think that what you're saying really benefits the area. And
Right, it would
like
be a design benefit for the people there. Then you mentioned a lot of trails too. I don't know, has there been talk about, some of those trails will be destroyed by this, but there are trails that exit the property and then keep going and connect over into the town forest. I don't know if there's talk of allowing, as the development talked about, like outside public access through the property. That, because there is, and there's a lot of people that use that. So has that topic been?
I don't think it will go away, but I can't honestly say that we've talked about provisioning for that in what we're doing, because I know what you're referring to is, you come up this way and you go out to Carlisle, but if you come down and around, you end up in the second CKT property, and then eventually that does wrap toward the town forest beyond Commerce, right? That's where you are.
Yeah, I think you can get to the town forest maybe
like
two different
7
ways, but I would
different
actually,
ways.
through Carlisle, it's more direct to the top of
okay.
the Commerce Way or whatever that end of that road is.
Yeah, so it's,
To
like I said, as far as
to the C3I property,
Right.
it leads you out to C3I.
yeah,
I'm saying the wrong street names, I think.
it's okay.
No, Commerce is right.
Commerce is right.
Because there's the driveway for the cell.
Right, you end up
Right.
getting out, you can go from here up to that
Right.
driveway to the cell tower and out to C3I.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you don't, the people use this, so people will cut through.
Right. I don't anticipate that there will be any restriction preventing people from continuing to use it once active construction is complete. Obviously, there's some
Right.
safety involved
Safety,
there. But after the fact, I believe it will stay the way that it is with the ability to bike and walk and whatever else through the paths.
So just back to that stream for a second, because I know that it's perennial, supposedly only from a certain point. But as we follow it up, is it pretty well protected by forest? I mean, I guess, again, we're kind of looking at the whole system again, right?
Something that shows the whole site.
That's existing.
That
Is
should
that too big?
Yeah, so, which button is it here?
Top.
one?
Top one.
So, yeah, where we're talking about now is down here. Watson Brook continues like this, and by the time you get up here, it's really very minimal.
Right.
But the 2017, actually, I don't know exactly when it was installed, but the initial development located a box culvert here. It's fairly well wooded, and this is a really nice crossing. Not all of our clients would put that in that or offer, because I didn't even really advocate for it too heavily. It's a nice crossing for a small stream like that. So that's all fairly well, I don't think it's formal protection, but it's part of the open space and the condo. The other thing I wanted to point out is the original location for this building that was down, sort of stuck in down here. And, you have this interesting wetland in that area. It's kind of hidden, you might not even know it's there, but it's one of these semi-permanent pond, small like kettle hole wetland. I'm not sure of the origins of it. And now that, with the moving of Building D, that's, all those buffer impacts that were to be proposed there are now gone. And that will, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting the situation, I believe this is what we talked about in 2022, was that will become open space as well. So that they'll add some protection to that wetland resources. Different as it may be from the stream, it is rather unique. It's kind of similar to the area that's across from Mobile. It's a little more visible. So you asked about open space, I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
As well, so.
Yeah, that's useful, because, there's the concern, would they then come back and say, oh, actually, we want to put a building there, 10 years down the road?
That hasn't been what I've heard from our client.
Yeah.
I put on the microphone, but the dialogues from the other side of things are that this would be for building development, and then the recreation features that are already there, like the clubhouse.
Yeah.
If you're gonna,
Yeah. Thank you. The conversation with the planning side is that this is a true relocation. So once Building D is approved and in the process of being built, this is it for the site. The features that are there will remain, and there's no ability to go back to that initial site and create like a Building E or anything like that. It is meant to be A through D, and that's it.
as far as that shoreland buffer impact, is that going to be any type of vegetation? Is that just going to be riprap?
No, we did talk a little bit about that in the site walk as well. And
There it is.
the slopes, certainly the outer slopes of the detention areas that you see in pink, and I don't know that detention pond is the right terminology for it. Though, we had always proposed that some sort of natural appropriate seed mix be specified for those slopes, and possibly for the bioretention area itself, within what's allowed, for maintaining the integrity of these areas. Nothing with large roots or anything like that. No trees, but that will be naturally vegetated, to answer your question, yes. It's not going to be riprap or, golf course lawn or anything. I don't think we pointed out, we've talked a lot about the shoreland, but as far as wetlands, we do have the wetland impact and wetland buffer impact associated with the crossing itself, but all the building and its associated areas are outside of the wetland buffer. And the building is outside of the 75-foot setback as well. And I'm not sure we have a lot more to formally present. If
Yeah,
there's any more questions,
I think I had
see how it would
one
be.
more of what that finger is. Sorry, I wasn't on the site walk.
Which,
That finger coming down that the road goes right through.
yeah,
That's not.
it's it's just a finger of wetland. A lot of times these,
So that's proposed to be impacted.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. What is it, forward or back? Yeah. So the red areas here
Right.
are the direct wetland impact areas, and of course we'll be submitting a state application for this as well. Relatively minor, 1,790, so just under 2,000 square feet altogether of wetland impact to those red areas. The crossing is about 40 feet long, again with the box culvert. So a fairly minor wetland application. State, as far as the state's considered, I think we should meet all the requirements. And yeah, that finger, nothing special. In fact, it did get bigger. That's the other thing I want to make clear. These were all, these wetlands in the vicinity of this project were all reflagged and resurveyed in 2020, late 2021, prior to us being here in 22. So they're still, valid within the 5-year time frame. And that was one area that actually, when you compare the old plans, did get a little bit bigger. Can't really explain that one, but there's nothing special about it. It's just wetland.
Well, do you have a wetland, is there a function of values in here? There is, right?
Yeah, I did.
And it's a forest, it's that, there's the trail, there's sort of a low wet spot on the trail that, I think it must be that I remember walking through.
Right, that's part of it. I think what's happening there is it is getting some additional water from the stormwater management was constructed already. So that area is a little wet. I guess you could technically kind of break that out as a really small area of emergent and scrub wetland. But this, the system as a whole is forested until you get further on downstream. then you really get into, what was, at the time we did the original application, was completely flooded, and goes back and forth depending on the beaver activity downstream. So that could be anything from, emergent to scrub shrub, but the edges, regardless, are all forested, and that's certainly what everything is upstream as well. I did do a functions and values report. I adjusted this. I didn't necessarily change what I had written before because that hasn't necessarily changed. There is some, I sort of updated this to the reflect the main change here from the access between the two buildings to using the roadway along this easement.
Any other questions?
I guess it's one challenging thing about, before we, get into reviewing the conditions and stuff, there's some things are draft in here in the documents, and there was some discussion of refining the design additionally in terms of parking lot reduction. There was talk about reducing the footbridge impacts. So I guess I'm not sure how handle that. I guess this is going before the planning board on Thursday.
Correct.
So there's that.
Right, and those are that is included in the application is even where I was pulling that from as well, of the parking spaces it was called out as.
Called out, yeah.
So, I don't know if that's something that planning board will see as well, but.
I guess they will.
Can you restate that? I missed it, sorry.
There was just an email, and then in the narrative, they were unsure if they were going to be able to reduce further. It didn't seem like the impacts were completely finalized. I'm trying to find the page, but it doesn't scroll too quickly.
That did go in the planning board packet as well.
It did. Okay.
They probably got the same. They received the same packet that we're
Yeah,
reviewing tonight.
Plus other.
Plus other things that are beyond our scope, yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, I don't know, maybe we review
Do we want to go through conditions
conditions.
and just add on conditions, or?
I think so.
Yeah, we can. So can we go through the conditions? Once again, I'm scrolling here, but
The criteria?
The
criteria,
that's
yeah.
what I mean.
That's page 68 in the PDF.
Thanks.
CUP criteria. You have to pick which one you want to do first.
Let's can start with the Wetland Conservation District CUP criteria. Does that sound up everyone's alley?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the first one is no alternative design which does not impact a wetland or wetland buffer, or which has less detrimental impact on a wetland or wetland buffer is feasible.
Yeah, so our take on that is that the past issues that we tried to overcome unsuccessfully in locating an access between the two buildings, which did involve fewer or less direct wetland impact, proved, to be not feasible. So we're actually reverting back to what was argued at the time by some members of the commission that this was really the preferred, or that this would be the access that was designated originally, was in a lot of ways the preferred option, in that it didn't wish to duplicate any impacts. There was other issues as well. So I think this is where we've landed with this, and we've gone through a number of different iterations of how to access the property, including, secondary access out to Commerce Way, which had other issues and was undesirable for a number of reasons, including resource-related ones, crossing of wetlands, vernal pool buffers, additional impact to buffers out that whole way. So although we have maybe more impacts overall here than some of those previous options, I think it's been pretty well demonstrated that those options are not feasible, which has brought us to this one.
And that, the previous plan had the driveway going where the footbridge is now, around the top of this drawing, the east side?
Correct.
Yes, yep. I'm hesitant to go back through these, so I'll get lost. Oh, so that's in a different one. But yes, you're correct that previous proposal went with an actual road, elevated such that it can contain utilities too. There it is right there. So that did have a relatively small direct wetland impact.
But that driveway is too long.
But that driveway violated, my understanding is, and I'm sort of at the edge of my expertise here, had issues as far as road length and health and safety concerns related to access, which could not be overcome.
Yeah, I think this is a good design. I mean, if you go back to the current design, I guess I want to make sure. Okay, so that one has the buffer impact. Okay, so that other map we were looking at didn't take into account the buffer impact surrounding the 6 foot, the quote unquote 6 foot footbridge. That one does. So I just want to make sure that those are acknowledged in what we're talking about here tonight.
Yes, so this is the supplemental filing impact plans that were provided after the initial submittal. So these
Okay.
are the most recent. They do have those two impact islands or triangles for that pathway.
And because of the bridge will span the wetland, we're saying there's no direct wetland impact
Right.
on the footbridge, but there will be on the surrounding buffer. Okay.
Yeah, I would echo what you're saying too, Drew. Like I'm trying to sort of compartmentalize the fact that we're sort of dealing with these draft and unknown impacts at the moment, and putting that aside, I think overall, I'm glad where we're landing here with design. I think getting a 14-foot open bottom box culvert out of this too is, excellent for that crossing. So I'm pretty happy with the alternative here, coming back to what I think we all sort of wanted, or I don't know about all of us, but I remember was the preferred alternative at the time, and being told that no can do. And I guess I'll let you continue driving. I just want to say, but I'm the one thing I'm having a hard time with, I guess, is the process-wise, is the fact that we're in this place of sort of these unknown impacts with some options and opportunities that seem very appealing. And if they were on the table and saying, yes, we're absolutely doing this, I'd be like, that's great. Like being able to reduce the parking, being able to go with a more natural, much less impact walking trail through there that keeps some of the natural boulder features. I mean, like, if that was like, yep, actually we're doing that and it's ready for the planning board meeting too, I'd be like, super. Not knowing that is feasible or how that will work out, or even the process, I guess, at the planning board, if it's sort of an unknown there as well, I think is what's stumbling me at the moment. But that said, yeah, feel free to continue.
Yeah, because you did remind me that the other unknown is that buffer impact on the pedestrian
Right,
bridge.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
I would say that would be a worst-case scenario that we have shown on this plan.
Yes.
And there would be opportunities to reduce that.
I think that's our feeling as well, especially after looking at it, is that it could benefit from a closer look with, the particularities of the topo that aren't reflected on what's available on the plan in mind, as well as you mentioned, what's out there now, the boulder, one of which is actually, I believe, this guy right here. So that it may be a paved path is what's desired, but it could resemble more of a trail with less grading than those green areas. There's no way around the fact that we don't have that detail now. I would perhaps encourage the commission's comments to reflect that those desires as we expressed as possible to be looked at further.
Yeah, and actually, and even in saying it out loud, and we do that plenty of times, right? We say like, this looks fine, except, try to reduce the parking, and we send that to the planning board with those specific comments. So I feel like we're sort of in that kind of space now, too. Yeah, to Brendan's point.
Can we keep forging on these criteria? So wetland scientist has provided an impact evaluation that includes function values of the wetlands, an assessment of the potential project-related impacts, and concluded to the extent feasible, the proposed impact is not detrimental to the value and function of the wetland or greater hydrologic system.
Yes, so I think my determination then and now is that the primary functions here are related to water quality. There is some flood attenuation function here, and wildlife habitat, particularly downstream. But there's an element of connectivity, and that is, I think, where this design actually does make some improvements that it's going to counterintuitive to the amount of impact, because we will be improving the main crossing substantially with a large structure, and with maybe a trail bridge will still be here at this location, but this was an elevated profile, a road that was going to be, I forget how, it was going to be a large obstacle to wildlife movement in that direction. So that's now generally not going to be the case with a path, even a paved one. And additionally, perhaps this goes without saying, but none of the potential issues with having any kind of secondary access out to Commerce Way. I could add to that maybe, but also further buffer protection for the kind of unique pond out front. So
I think you're good.
I think
covered
a
it.
pretty clear case of better for that one.
Next criteria is the proposed use will not create a hazard to individual or public health and safety and welfare due to the loss of wetland contamination of groundwater, or other reasons. Did you want to address that one? I think you
Yeah,
hit that one.
yeah, the project doesn't involve anything, doesn't involve a use that would cause any of those problems. I think what I wrote here, if anything like what that were to happen, it would more likely be related to impacts, to direct and large impacts to the stream itself, which could, cause flooding or problems like that, of that nature. We're improving the crossing, which will prevent an instance such as that existing culvert failing, causing a backup upstream, which could then wash out downstream. The project includes, as do all projects in Exeter now, the comprehensive stormwater management, which counts for quality but also quantity. So I don't see any way that it could endanger public, health or welfare.
The next one is concentrates on restoration proposal. So in cases where the proposed use is temporary or where construction activity disturbs areas adjacent to the immediate use, the applicant has included a restoration proposal revegetating any disturbed area within the buffer with the goal to restore the site as nearly as possible to its original grade and condition following construction. So that'd be focused on that. Mainly I'm focused on that shoreline buffer.
Yeah, so most of that would be the shoreland. I know we're not technically there yet, but there's some small areas of side slope grading, like along the road. And I guess the question mark would also be this, but the commitment here would be to restore anything that's been graded but doesn't need to be pavement, with a native seed mix of some sort and allowed to become naturalized. And those in the wetland buffer, there's very minimal, precisely because we actually don't have very much wetland buffer impact. It's really just at the crossing.
And I believe it's the last one. The applicant may propose an increase in wetland buffers elsewhere on the site that surround a wetland of equal or greater size and of equal or greater function value than the impacted wetland.
So that one would fully be the original building D location. And I wish we had an aerial photo, but that area will receive substantial improvement. Do you have the old plan?
Criteria numbers, right? I don't know. I'm reading his.
Well, go to the old.
It doesn't sound.
No, it doesn't. I'm reading his in the application.
Here.
No, that's all right. You won't see.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Included in your
It's not
packet
the
was
same.
a figure that we had done to demonstrate just that. Yeah, right. So there's the original building D location. That's actually
Yeah.
the larger version of it that we're proposing to be constructed in its location that we're talking about. But it does demonstrate even the smaller building D had a fair amount of buffer impact there.
Yeah.
So that area is, going to be much better protected by the current proposal.
Just to clarify, there was a little bit of confusion because the criteria as listed in the application differs from the order of the criteria that our current zoning lists. But just to catch us all up, So you already addressed current criteria 1, proposed uses permitted. Criteria 2, no alternative design which does not impact a buffer or is less impactful is feasible. You talked about that. The wetland scientist, functions and values concluded. There was, the impact is not detrimental to the system. And 5, then skipping 4 for the moment, 5, the proposed use will not create a hazard. And 7, where the use is temporary, restoration is proposed. I don't believe you discussed 4, 6, and 8. You were
Yeah, we
just
like
starting 6.
kind of touched on 6. But do you want me to go back and read 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, just so
Yeah.
that we're consistent.
Yep. So, Brendan, so 4 is that the design, construction, and maintenance of the proposed use will, to the extent feasible, minimize detrimental impact on the wetland or wetland buffer, which was kind of touch on others, but I'd like to address this one
Yeah,
directly.
there's a good amount of overlap with these, I'd say.
Yeah, one is avoidance, the other is minimization.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Yes, so the design, I think I've mentioned a number of times now, the upgrading of the crossing, that's the sort of the major design feature that will accomplish what this standard is expressing. Beyond that, the naturalization of slopes that aren't intended or don't need to be, that are disturbed and not paved, will work towards that same goal. Yeah, the other thing I didn't mention, I'm glad I'm reading what I wrote too, that the Watson Brook crossing, it is not side slopes entirely. There is walls there. Is that correct? So, I mean, this is sort of the classic, and I'm glad we did this. If you don't put walls, you get asked to put them in. If you don't put a box culvert, you get asked for that. So, yeah, so this is actually about as narrow as it can be because there is retaining walls used through there. So that's a major point of the design, which I almost missed. As far as the maintenance of the site, I don't have any specific information about how that will be accomplished. I do remember that there was discussion on the previous proposals for use of informed use of de-icing chemicals and such and how the site's managed with landscaping and the use of pesticides. This applies more to the shoreland district, but that I believe is also part of the proposal, remains part of the proposals today.
In terms of how the condo docks, how the condo operates.
Right, yeah, so the condo docks will reflect within the stormwater management guidelines, some of those kind of like reduction in salt areas and that type of thing around the wetland to protect the wetland, and the maintenance of how the access way is plowed in the winter and maintained in the winter. And we can put that in the stormwater manual as an opportunity, and then it will also be reflected in the condo docs, which is typical.
Is that kind of thing like enforceable, so to speak, or it seems like one of those things that gets put in as words and never
So
looked at again?
The stormwater features are enforceable to an extent because Exeter is an MS4 town, so the owners are required to submit an annual report on their maintenance activities. I don't know that there is like a negative if they don't submit that, but they're, other than some nasty certified mail. But the intent is that they will do that as part of the documentation.
And that is, I'm looking at part of what I had from last time here, and that was something that was discussed, was location of snow storage outside this is relative to the shoreline protection district, but location of snow storage outside the shoreland, as well as, I forget what they call it, the Green Pro certified.
Green Snow Pro.
Green Snow Pro. And that these sort of things would be incorporated into the operation and maintenance plan for the site. If you notice, there's not a lot of, the site in general does not have large areas of lawn or anything like that. That's by design, I believe. It has a different feel to it. There's small areas of lawn. And I believe, I hope I'm not incorrect on this, because I know this was discussed, that they've all been being managed with, commitment to low fertilizer and pesticide use. Did we cover all of them?
We have not. So number 6, we were somewhat touching on, but I think we should revisit. The applicant may propose an increase in wetland buffers elsewhere on the site that surround a wetland of equal or greater size and of condition or greater functional value than the impacted wetland. You were discussing the prior location of building D.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of buffer impact. So we're already maintaining, there's no buffer impacts all along here. Really the only, aside from the trail we've been discussing, these impacts are all related to the road itself. So the only area where we can protect wetland buffer would be that around that front area, the old location of Building D. And I think it's meaningful.
And then that was number 6. So then number 7 is in cases where the proposed use is temporary.
7 you did.
7 we covered. Nice catch, Kristen. So then 8. That all required permits shall be obtained from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Water Supply and Pollution Control Division under New Hampshire RSA 485-A, Section 17. The New Hampshire Wetlands Board under New Hampshire RSA 483-A, and the United States Army Corps of Engineers under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act.
Obviously, that'll be the case. We wouldn't have a project otherwise.
Glad to hear, and I think Exeter will be copied on at least the wetlands portion of that.
Yeah, well, I'll very likely be back in a couple weeks.
Because we would need a comment on it.
With the dredge and fill application. Ideally, these things kind of proceed concurrently, and I'd be asking you about that right now, but sometimes not. So I'll be back, hopefully with the same plan, at least the same relative to the state impacts, which are just the road there. And you can offer comment at that time. Should we move on to the shoreland?
I think we can, do we have to vote on wetland before we proceed with shoreland?
I would recommend it.
Yeah.
While it's fresh in your minds.
Yep.
Yeah.
So any further discussion? I don't believe we've opened anything up to the public, but are we required to do so? I see no public. And nobody's online, so any further discussion from,
Well, things we
The
might
board.
want, maybe we just talk about things we might want to include in a motion rather than making a motion and then amending it 4 times. Seems to be, we're good at that.
I have,
Because it seems like there are a few things here that, to me, it was adding that original area to the condo's open space. I think that could be something in terms of protecting the property, something. And then also minimizing the footbridge buffer impacts to the extent possible. That's the other thing.
I
In terms
had,
of the wetland buffers.
yeah, that was a good catch. I was about to dive into shoreland, so. My big one was reduce the impacts associated with pedestrian trail connecting building C and D, so.
Yeah.
I like the add the original area to the condo open space to further protect the property. And
What about the top, on that topic of adding in buffers to make up for the part affected by the road? Is there anything that we can say about that?
I don't know how do you, I don't know what that would, adding like additional buffer distances.
Well, no, I'm talking about, I guess that's, I'm not sure that's how it would be phrased.
The
Right,
offset,
The offsetting of the impact with,
right, I guess that's what I was meaning.
But then,
But I don't know what, there's no offset, we don't have like we're not the Wetland Arm Fund or something where you can make a donation. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, generally in the past, it's been used to justify either land conservation or
Or-
some sort of level of protection, so I think, and we've seen applications that span the gamut from, just HOA protected all the way to permanently protected through conservation easement, third-party conservation easement, so.
I guess, yeah.
oh, I see what you're
Being
saying.
specific about what your intentions are.
So does that open space follow the exterior of the buildings? I'm sure that's in here somewhere, but there's
The
a
original
lot of
site?
pages.
The original site, you mean?
So there's no dedicated open space. It is just developed and undeveloped
Mhm.
land
Okay.
currently.
Yeah, I'm just reading that language of may propose an increase in wetland buffers elsewhere on the site. So I don't know what the mechanic is for that.
So Brendan suggested that by not developing Building D in its originally proposed location, which is south toward the mobile station, and including that, Drew suggested a condition to include that as part of the, I forget your wording, but open space.
Open space.
But
Including
there
that as
isn't,
part
you're
of
saying
it.
there's technically no open space in this.
Undeveloped, I guess we'll call it then.
You can say it.
Just remain undeveloped is really some sort of mechanism that we've stated that we're not supportive of additional.
So we're not adding.
Property
new
is
language.
down.
If they're calling it an undeveloped, we'll increase the undeveloped land, instead of adding a new language saying open space. Maybe.
I guess if that is your intention, I would suggest you include the condition that they protect through homeowners association regulations, the area associated with the former Building D location.
Yeah.
in perpetuity.
That's a better phrase.
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
intent of what I'm trying to say.
Right. I like that because I'm very familiar with this area, so I've been watching it over time. And maybe somebody will say, not enough time has passed for some of these things to, mainly the slopes, to revegetate. To me, it looks concerning when I go by there. It's very steep. I don't know the rules and the guidelines, so I'm not saying that I do. It's presumably within guidelines, but it seems like there is erosion happening already, and the amount of revegetation is pretty minimal. The silt, what do you call those things? You know, the silt traps are, yeah, well, they're the tubular ones. I don't- Say it again?
Siltsock.
Siltsock, there we go. And I do think that, you said this, there is more water in those areas than there used to be, which seems logical, as you said, that it's coming from the paved surfaces and lawns and whatnot. They're not within the buffer, so I'm not sure if there's anything for us to say about it exactly, but it is in the criteria about the impacted, what's the phrasing? Restoration proposal, restore the site as nearly as possible to its original grade and condition. My opinion, I don't really see that in the work that's already been done because the grading is much different than the original site, making it a bunch of, not ravines, but something like that. And I really don't even see how this plan contributes to that. I can see how it's better than what you had a few years ago before I've only been here for, coming up on 2 years, I think, for a year and a half. I'm just concerned about those grades, and it is within one of the criteria. So I'm not sure what to do with that. I'm not as knowledgeable about how to phrase that, but I have been going by there regularly for years, and it seems a little concerning to me. So when looking at that criteria, and I'm trying to stick to the criteria, I don't really see that one being accomplished. It's very steep. It seems like there is erosion happening and increased water flow into the wetland.
So I'm not sure what, I would need to review the former plans to know what was done for seeding specs for the temporary impact areas. But
Could you define the area where you're seeing that a little bit better?
Well, the main one that I see that is probably where this road is going to go. So that's kind of, I'm not quite sure what I want to do with that comment, because that's all going to be erased and there will be a road there. Okay, but I think there's similar spots wherever we see the tight elevation lines, and I don't know what to say about, presumably these are concrete retaining walls, reinforced concrete retaining walls, where we see retaining walls.
There's, I don't know, can I talk?
On the side of the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, there's retaining walls on the side of the road. Now, there's not a lot of others, like I just point out that this is the wetland buffer here, this purple line. There's no work.
I got you. Hold on.
How did that happen? The only place where, other than the road, where we're gonna have mostly walls, the only other place where we have buffer impacts is this connecting walking trail. And as we discussed, you know, unfortunately, we can't go through all the details. All we can do is represent what the intent is going to be in the design in that area, which would absolutely include exactly what we're talking about here, which would be restoration of any impacts that weren't necessary for that, whatever is ultimately approved for the trail itself. And I believe that's what that would be the design goal for something like that anyway. I don't think that, what's desired is a cleared out alignment through there. But as far as wetland buffer everywhere else, there's no other impacts. So there isn't any other opportunities to do what we're talking about other than pointing out that we have avoided the wetland buffer impacts previously associated with the old building D.
But there's nothing binding though, right? Like, there's nothing that say in 10 years, if we don't put something in here, it's gonna prevent people from building on the original site of building D, right? And so I think that's what I would like to see, is something that makes that not a possibility in the future.
Yeah, I believe, unless I'm getting confused, I think that was a separate item that you were discussing, and
Yeah, she just said in perpetuity, the HOA in perpetuity can build on
I
that
think
site. On that
we can,
original building D site.
yeah, and I feel like that's a perfectly acceptable, reasonable.
Yeah, and we can condition that.
yeah. But then the slopes, Sean, is there a certain area, is it that stormwater feature that's on the bottom part of that figure by the crossing? Is that the area you're looking at?
That area right now is, I would
It's
say,
wet.
not in good condition in terms of restoration. I kind of don't know what to do with that because it's going to become, there's going to be a bunch of rock presumably poured in there and then paved on top. Okay, so that'll be completely different. I think you answered the one part of my question, which was, it does say within the buffer, right? So we'll have to ignore, all these places you came right up to the buffer. Well, that's what it calls for. You're allowed to do that. Okay. But yeah, that area in our picture to the right side of building, where it says, whatever building that is, A, where it says Area 1 impacts, are the words written there. That's the part I think is getting, all around that whole building is getting eroded
Here.
badly, yeah.
Around building 1,
Yeah, just where
sloping
you see
down.
all of those elevation lines that are steep,
Yeah.
where that's I wasn't there when they did it, but presumably been, bulldozed up into that steep slope. I'm skeptical, and that is within the buffer, I think, if I'm reading the map correctly, right?
Yes. Right,
so-
that would have been,
But that's already, was done, was approved and done, so.
So currently, a landscaping plan is not on file, right?
There is one provided.
Oh, there was a landscaping
Yes.
plan.
It's a draft,
Right.
but it is there.
Were there any areas for supplemental planting you think the applicant would be supportive of within the buffer? So you identified native seeds, perhaps along the trail. Is that what you're looking for, or?
I guess I had two things. One was the question, which has been answered, because it matters where that buffer line is drawn. It doesn't say you have to restore the slope except for within the buffer. That's been asked and answered. My concern is the erosion control and the runoff management. And it seems like a lot of these, not just this development by any means, a lot of them seem to basically revert to some kind of grass mix, which really doesn't do anything. I don't know if there's a solution there. If we look out into the natural environment, those slopes would be covered with probably things that maybe residents wouldn't find so appealing, but are good at controlling the terrain and the water, like brambles and things. But, so sorry for not having like a discrete suggestion, but that's my concern.
So potentially in relation to, see, it's hard because the new stormwater management area is outside of the wetland buffer, but within the shoreland buffer. And so then we could, have a conversation that in the approval of the shoreline conditional use permit, maybe, one of the conditional recommendations, I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it.
Yeah.
But would be that, additional restorative planting plans are provided, and we put the clause in about, there's a standard of condition approval that the planning board uses that's something to the extent of, you have your 85% stabilization, which is the requirement, but then you have the dead and dying plants must be replaced within, the first 2 years. It's like a 2-year warranty period or something to that extent, that may be appropriate for the shoreland side. And then I would think that if this condition 6, to say that we could propose a restorative planting along the edge of that side slope, maybe it's just.
The south side, I think what he's saying is that south side that's very steep
Yeah, all
down
this-
to the,
Whatever steep slopes
Yeah.
are being
Yeah.
introduced by this
Right.
current plan.
Yeah, there are a lot of
South
steep
side.
slopes around
Right.
this new building.
no,
Right.
this building.
And there are a lot around the other ones as well, but let's, I guess,
Yeah.
focus
Let's
on this.
focus on this one,
aspect.
right.
That would address what I'm saying, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can continue this line of thought and questioning when we get to the shoreland, where I think it's going to be a little more relevant. I don't dispute that I actually don't, I didn't notice it myself, but I've seen this kind of thing often, that there was some construction back, I don't remember the exact limits of disturbance when this was done. But there is a small, this is a rain garden, small rain garden of some sort. So there was something done out there. Plus, as you alluded to, it's right in back of the building, so there's other concerns from residents and such at play, potentially. I don't know if that's the case here or not. In contrast, the existing building, which is the subject of our being here tonight, has none of those issues. We're completely outside of the wetland buffer. And, you don't have, for instance, that situation here, where the building and the proposed tree line ends completely outside of that, so that's going to be protected in its existing condition, forested. We do, as I mentioned, we do have more that's more relevant in the shoreland with the construction of these basins, these stormwater practices, and the slopes, where we said we willing to commit to a naturalization there. Then maybe there's more that can be done there. I also will add that, well, there's additional concerns, that relate to the integrity of the slopes, where we can't be planting trees and stuff. But the way this looks shouldn't necessarily bother anyone either, because it's not in back of anyone's patio or anything. So that should make that easier.
So do we want to address that in the shoreland and not the wetlands?
Shoreland, yeah.
So for wetlands, for conditions, if you don't mind, I'm going to run through them real quick. I've included originally, I have reduced the impacts of associated pedestrian trail connecting building C and D and keep natural and wetland buffers to great extent possible. I have protect the originally proposed building D location in perpetuity within the HOA. I didn't know how to word that one because
Documentation,
documentation, that's good.
or
Condominium
Condo
documentation.
docs, yeah.
Yeah, it's condo for this one. Which is an HOA, it was the same thing.
Oh, and then the number of spaces.
I think that's shoreline.
Yeah, that was a shoreland
Oh,
one.
shoreline.
Yeah.
So I only have those two
Yeah.
for specific to the wetland CUP.
Yeah.
I mean, regarding the buffer and the slopes that Sean was bringing up, there's nothing stopping us from saying like,
Adding something.
we strongly recommend the facility look at its existing wetland buffers to determine if adequate vegetation exists in the previously impacted areas. Something to that extent of, I mean, it would be a recommendation, but
Yeah.
What do you think, Kristen?
I feel like your comments should be limited to the application before you. If there's something that because you can't make them meet additional requirements for a former application. You know, if the last time they went through, they weren't required to do something, and you can't go back and increase what they're required to do. I don't know.
yeah, but if someone's not in compliance, why would we approve something if there's a violation, existing violation at the site? If we're here now approving a new thing. If
The board's
something
decision.
we've previously approved is not correct, to me, I would rather at least acknowledge that. But I guess the issue is we don't have it. I don't have a clear sense of what exactly
I don't think
those areas are.
it was incorrect. I just don't think something is not working.
Right, I guess that's what, that's what
Not
I
if- But I think they followed, I'm saying they followed the rules, but
Right.
it's not working.
If it follows the rules, then I
Then, right.
have nothing else to say about it. I just want to bring that
No,
forward.
right, but.
What's the language of it? I mean, what's the language that we're saying
Well,
right
let's
now
do
about
the
that?
one
Yeah, why don't we-
Land, and that will do that in.
Shoreline.
But that's
Yeah.
my question on that third one that we're talking about for the wetlands. What was the current language on that?
For the recommendation, the Drew one, I haven't made language
Okay.
yet
All
for
right.
that one.
Okay, never mind.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I guess we can put it into the shoreland to ensure that the same situation doesn't occur
Yeah, yes, that's how it
in
works.
next phase.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Putting what into the shoreline? Talking about the buffer, or the slope that falls within the shoreline of the project that's before us.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna
Vegetation.
throw out my 2 cents here, just being a process guy, that I agree, I don't think we should take up the current slopes of another project within the scope of this now. I don't think this is the place for it. I think there are other avenues if we want to address, if something needs addressing. And it's not here, so.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess, and then my 2 cents is we can address whatever is in our project scope.
Yeah.
To ensure that that doesn't,
Yes.
same thing doesn't happen in our current project. Woof. Okay. Do we have a motion on the table?
You should motion. You should do it. I'll second it.
Does anybody want a motion? Okay, I will motion. Let's see what the official language is. I will motion that we have reviewed the wetland conditional use permit application and are in support of the application with the following conditions: to reduce the impacts associated with the pedestrian trail connecting Building C and Building D, and keep natural and limit buffer impacts to the greatest extent possible. Additionally, number 2 would be protect the originally proposed Building D location in perpetuity within the condominium documentation.
Protect from,
I just wrote protect.
protect from further development? How's it read now?
Yeah, so I can amend my, my condition to say, reducing impacts associated with the pedestrian trail connecting building C and D, and keep natural and limit buffer impacts to greatest extent possible. And then protect from further development the originally proposed building D location in perpetuity to the within the condominium documentation.
A second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those against are not in favor. So that was 2, 4, 6, 7. So that was a unanimous decision, 7-0. The motion passes. On to the next one. So the next one is shoreland conditional use permit. Kristen, would you like to go through the criteria on this one as well? I can go through it. I was just seeing if we wanted to.
We
should. Okay.
I mean, a lot of it is similar, but different areas, I guess.
Yeah, so I have
Try to
A.
keep it
I have A through E. We'll try to keep this one short since we did discuss it. So the first one is my understanding. Double check me on this one. The proposed use will not detrimentally affect the surface water quality of the adjacent river or tributary or otherwise result in unhealthful conditions.
So two main ways that I believe this is being met. One is through the construction, through the fact that a lot of the proposed impact is actually intended expressly for the purpose of maintaining water quality, as well as vegetation of slopes in a naturalized state, as we discussed a few different points this evening. The structure itself, which will improve connectivity and facilitate water, quality of water and healthy conditions in the watershed, in the water body.
Comments on that? We can go to B. Is the proposed use will discharge no wastewater on site other than that normally discharged by domestic wastewater disposal systems and will not involve on-site storage or disposal of hazardous or toxic waste as herein defined.
Yeah, the project is not going to discharge any waste, will be serviced by sewer. And there's no other hazardous discharges associated with the multifamily residential use.
The next one is the proposed use will nor result in undue damage to spawning grounds and other wildlife habitat.
Yeah, so obviously the structure, maintaining a large structure, to the extent that anything is utilizing this area for spawning, that's not going to be restricted by the existing substandard crossing. Additionally, in the shoreland protection district itself, which does overlap with the wetland buffer, other than the roadway being constructed, there is no other impacts to this natural buffer, which also should have been mentioned, I suppose, the previous condition related to the health of the watershed in general. So really an improvement in that regard.
The proposed use complies with the use regulations identified in Article 9.3.4, Exeter Shoreline Protection District Ordinance, use regulations, and all other applicable sections of this article, which does comply.
Minimum lot size is met. I don't have those numbers, but that was the case before. Nothing's changed as far as the size of this lot. The maximum lot coverage was met before. This number may in fact be subject to a slight improvement if parking spaces can in fact be removed from that shoreland area. But I'm comfortable representing that this will be met. It was close before at 9%, but met. The building 9.3.4C building setbacks, there's a 100-foot building setback to Watson Brook in this location, and that is being met, respected. Surface alterations and vegetative buffer. These requirements do not apply to this portion of the shoreline protection district. These surface alteration and vegetative buffer requirements only apply to the major rivers and their major tributaries, so the Exeter, Squamscott, and their major tributaries. Watson Brook in this location falls within the all other perennial streams in the watershed, and there is no surface alteration, setback, or vegetative buffer requirement associated with this portion. However, other than the crossing itself, which is kind of by necessity, you're proposing a crossing, you're going to have impacts in that location. But otherwise, we actually do meet those requirements for everywhere else along the shoreline here. Lastly is 9.3.4F relative to prohibited uses, and these would be things like disposal of solid waste, handling of hazardous or toxic materials, disposal of liquids or leachable waters, buried storage, petroleum fuel. We're not proposing any of those uses at this site.
Where's waste disposal? How is that? Where is that handled on this site?
It's going to be handled by sewer. So it'll be
No, I meant trash.
So the
trash.
trash storage is by private collection, and there is provisions for it in the basement of the building.
In the basement, okay.
And then there's one more condition.
Oh, okay. Yep.
If I just scroll to it, it's
Yeah, design and construction are consistent with the intent and purpose set forth in the Shoreline Protection District ordinance. So it really, for all the reasons that we've kind of find myself repeating for a lot of these, but these are the major elements of the project. We have a major crossing on the waterway, which is being improved significantly, which has all sorts of benefits, that relate to water quality and the protection of habitat through the district and continuity. And not, even though we don't have, as I was just mentioning, we don't have a vegetated buffer requirement in this portion of the district, but we are in fact, meeting that requirement largely by, I think it was 75 feet if it was
Yep.
available. So there is some, we have some grading that's closer to that. This is a 50-foot buffer from very poorly drained soils in this wetland here. But maintaining all that wetland buffer in its entirely natural condition, as well as restoring the grading necessary to construct the water quality stormwater areas goes a long way to protecting what I think really the major interest of the shoreland ordinance is to protect the water quality in these watersheds. And of course, the large amount of the impacts we're proposing relate directly to that. The use is allowed, is an allowed use by conditional permit, the multifamily residential use, which is itself located outside of the shoreline district. So it's really just the necessary water quality improvements that we're asking for relief to construct those. And the interest of the act would suggest to me that that's entirely appropriate and in fact necessary.
Any further discussion on shoreland CUP? One thing just to note, Brendan, if you could address all of those within your application, so that same little mess up doesn't happen again for me.
I'm sorry, just
Address the CUP criteria. I understand why you didn't address some of them because they were just like simple yeses, like following the 9.3.1. I don't see that in your application narrative.
yeah.
There was no formal application narrative, that's probably
There
why.
wasn't. What I usually do,
Okay, I guess that falls into another one then. If there was a formal
reading from-
application narrative, that would be.
It would be in there, yes.
what I usually do and what happened this time is I address the criteria that are squarely related to the wetlands, functions, and values. A lot of the other standards, to the extent they relate to, is the use allowed, these sort of
Yeah,
questions.
yeah. I guess if that was just addressed anywhere in the narrative, I would appreciate that in the future. That's not a.
Yeah, it's simply not in the documents that were provided to you tonight.
So conditions on this one. I have some suggestions.
I was just thinking about what Sean said, and maybe we just say, due to the fact that these steep slopes are in the shoreline buffer, that we request that the planning board address this when they are reviewing this. I think that's kind of their lane, but
Through long-term
yeah.
maintenance. Or,
Because it's already a problem for the homeowners association or what, what problems they're having with building A. So I just think we're saying to them that because it's in the buffer, it could have, affect us, but it's something they should deal with, I guess, with their approvals.
What do we want them to do?
Those were.
Review it, because they have to look at, I guess, I don't know how do you say it, but to look at the degradation of the area behind Building A is what you're saying, I was thinking.
Well, I mean, so Trevor kind of pointed out rightly that, well, it is, part of that is in this application because it's the road, but the road's already acknowledged as being a disruption.
Right.
Okay, so, fine. So maybe we do have to leave that alone. That's a fair point.
That
And then-
purple, but it's in
but
that
then the
purple
and
area,
pink
yeah.
This is just a plain question on my part. The criteria are different for the shoreline ones than the wetland ones, and it doesn't have that same statement about grading.
Right.
It says about water quality management. So there's this, not quite a pond, maybe someday a pond, or how do we interpret that? It says stormwater management area.
It's meant to be a detention basin that would drain.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'm not coming out and being like, there's something wrong with this. I'm just trying to understand it and make sure I have the criteria straight. I think the statement was that that's attempting to address the criteria for the shoreline.
Shoreline, yeah.
So if we think it does, then that would resolve my question. My concern about the slopes has to fit within the criteria. So if that's steep and it's not maintaining that water quality,
Yeah.
I don't know what the resolution of it is, but I'm posing the concern. That's all.
And it is very steep. We walked up
I
there.
think it's
Very steep.
approximately similar grade, maybe a slightly lower grade than the other parts.
Yeah, and I think that making sure that we get that on in our conditions, like however we want to word that.
Word,
Sorry,
yeah.
my words are breaking up at this point. I'm just confirming that we're keeping building A out of what we're doing at the moment.
No, yeah, I wasn't saying point to, but if they wanted, were wondering what we were talking about, you could look to building A. That's what, I guess,
Okay.
but.
So would we be looking for like a revegetation number that we want to
I did
hit?
see the planting plan in there,
Yeah.
and there's trees and things specified, birches, I think, and stuff around that area. We don't have to go through all that, it's getting really late.
What I envision, I guess this would be by way of a recommendation,
Yeah, there you go.
clearly we've represented that the goal, the desire would be to naturalize those slopes, and that would be for two elements of the shoreline district. Protection of water quality by maintaining a slope that's not eroding, and the naturalized state for habitat purposes. We don't have the details, so I think we envision that there would be an additional landscape element, something added to the plans that would specify exactly what seed mix, and I'm sure that we'll have that discussion. A member of the planning board is particularly interested in that sort of thing, and what exactly will take place on that slope to meet that goal. Because that detail admittedly is missing at the moment, so that would be something that might benefit from and making its way into a condition.
Yeah, I think it's important to note too that we've touched briefly on behind building A as being an area that's having a difficult time
Right.
revegetating. And I believe kind of just looking at this, those slopes are significantly steeper than the slopes that we're proposing in that basin. So basin slopes by standard are designed to be 3-to-1. Versus the ones that we're looking at behind A are significantly steeper than that just from the first, overall look, and that may have a factor in why that area is having a difficult time revegetating. And to kind of expand on that, because of the other permits that are going to be involved in this project with AOT being involved, and I believe Army Corps will need a construction general permit for this one as well. With those factors, those stormwater management areas that we're talking about naturalizing with, whether it's it wouldn't be a wetland seed mix, but whatever the grass mixture is that's there, part of the requirements of completing that development and them getting their sign off is that their slopes in the stormwater areas are vegetated to 85% or greater. And so that, also kind of adds to the back end of that area in particular. And I hope that helps put you at ease a little bit. That there's some additional stuff for that particular space that has to be considered.
Sometimes I feel like it is picky to get into the landscaping plans and stuff, but I mean, I back up to a wetland at my house, and places like this, I observe that it seems to me it can make a tremendous difference, actually. Maybe more so than some of the things that are more written down. And now seeing the pond and the planting plan for it, it does, I think you've answered my questions. I don't know if there's a way we can ask for that, revegetation plan. But it's my chance.
Computer. Sure.
What's the text you have?
So the first one that I don't think we've touched on yet, but I think we kind of have a general consensus: reduce sparking and associated impacts within shoreline buffer to greatest extent possible. And then I have been working on language, but I've been really stuck on that 85% number because that's a state number. An additional landscape plan specifying seed mix be provided or supplied. I don't know how we felt about that. And then I have impacts within shoreline buffer to meet 85% revegetation. I think that's, but.
It's already a requirement, right?
What was that?
You were saying it's already a requirement, so.
Pretty much, yeah. So I don't know if there's any additional conditions from there.
The only other thing we talked about was sort of low salt, minimize salt, winter salting on the crossing.
Any others?
Did we talk about just, that feed into that stream from outside the shoreline? I don't even know. I mean, we can't really say anything because it's not inside the district. But I don't even know, maintain.
I'm not sure where you mean.
Well,
Like maintain as an open space kind of thing?
yeah, maybe. I guess, again, going back to that whole system. But I think I'm just going to let it go.
Yeah, because it is out of that shoreland protection area.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will try it. So I motion I'm going to steal the language, that we have reviewed the shoreline conditional use permit application and are in support of the application with the following amendment and conditions. To reduce parking and associated impacts within shoreline buffer to greatest extent possible. To minimize salting on the access road, specifically on the wetland crossing. And then I did have the supply an additional landscape plan specifying seed mix. Because I thought that was important, but.
Yeah.
Specifying seed mix in temporary disturbance areas.
Yep.
I thought you had said something about the success criteria.
Do you think that it is allowable to put in? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's easier to know if you've met it or not if you have metrics. It helps the applicant and the town.
I'm just undoing. Let's see if it pops up. Okay, and then, so I have one more additional condition then, with impacts within shoreline buffer to meet 85% revegetation upon completion of the project.
Temporary.
Temporary, within temporary impacts. And then within disturbance areas, Okay. So can I recondition or retry this again, everybody? Does that work? So I motion that we have reviewed the shoreline conditional use permit application and are in support of the application with the following conditions. Reduce parking and associated impacts within the shoreline buffer to greatest extent possible. An additional landscape plan be supplied specifying seed mix within the disturbance areas. That temporary impacts within shoreline buffer are to meet 85% revegetation upon completion of project, and to minimize salting within the access road, specifically at the wetland crossing.
Second.
Any discussion on that? So we will vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 And then all those against, say nay. So this sounds like unanimous. That's 7-0 with the conditional approval.
Thank you.
Do you want me to send those conditions?
That would be fantastic.
Okay.
You're taking this to another level here. This is hard to follow.
I watched you open up OneNote, so I did the same.
Wow.
So I also do wonder if there is interest among the board for anyone to be present at the planning board meeting.
Yes.
I think it's helpful if someone is there to answer any questions that might come up.
And that is on Thursday.
This Thursday at 7.
7, yes.
I unfortunately have another night meeting.
That's a challenging time for me to come. I was hoping to go. I like going. It's good for us to go.
I haven't gotten the phone from Jen yet.
Okay. I'm sure it's on the phone. Yeah, it is the first item on the agenda after minutes.
Yeah, the new business. So I also cannot go because I have another night meeting. Otherwise,
I can't go. I have another, I have company.
I may be able to try. I don't know. I don't know if anyone else can go.
I might be able to.
They usually ask for input after the presentation and everything, so it might not be directly at 7.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thanks. Good night.
If you can't, you can't. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on this one specifically, it'd be nice to have somebody, but. All right. We have some other business that I would love to breeze through or not do and save for next meeting.
I did have some expense approvals, but I'm not prepared to talk about them at the moment.
Sounds good to me. Has anybody looked at them? Can we just skip to minutes or? Perfect. So the minutes, approval of minutes. I did a run through, it looked good. When I was looking at it a couple minutes ago, so. Does anybody else have anything on the minutes?
Nope.
So we have to motion for that. I motion to approve the meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. So approved. 7-0. The next meeting is July 8th. Submission deadline June 27th. That's my computer going to sleep. It just died on us. Perfect timing. Was there anything further? I know we have correspondence, but.
There was one request from the Town of Brentwood Conservation Commission and Recreation Department to see if the Concom was interested in a September 20th joint paddle, and they, suggested either we hold our own events on that date or go together and paddle their section, which is upstream of Pickpocket. So if that's of interest, maybe we can talk about it at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Sounds cool.
I just look to you as our paddle master, Kyle, so. Yeah, that sounds like a next meeting topic. Meeting adjourned at 10:01 p.m.
Do the gavel.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. We're done.
Thank you
Yay.
for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found